I'm Dr. Dave Janda. Welcome back to our Insider Insight Show. I am honored to have back with me someone I consider a friend and someone every time he comes on our radio show on Sundays, Operation Freedom, sets the deep state on fire. And I can tell you, we get immense blowback for the truth that Robert David Steele delivers on a repetitive basis, and it's an honor to have him back. Let me give you a little background on Robert because it's incredible, so we have a great foundation here. Robert is a former CIA clandestine officer and open source champion. He is the epitome, and he really is the founder of open source intelligence, if you will. Interesting, Robert was recently named as a candidate for the Nobel Peace Prize. Now, Jan Klavik, the editor-in-chief of Defense and Intelligence Norway, published a documented critique of the Nobel Peace Prize process to date. Intelligence and the Nobel Peace Prize, and announced that he has recommended Robert David Steele for nomination by a Norwegian minister. And here's what he wrote. Robert David Steele is qualified both for helping to prevent World War III this past year, publicly confronting the lies being told to us by our own national intelligence community with respect to the Russians hacking the U.S. election, and for his body of work in the preceding year and over time, including leadership in redirecting the craft of intelligence, decision support, away from the spies and secrecy enabling war and waste toward open sources and methods favorable to peace and prosperity. Since creating the Marine Corps intelligence activity in 1988, and discovering that the U.S. secret world knows nothing about 96% of the real world, Steele has been the leading global champion for open source intelligence and more recently, open source everything engineering. It is my honor to have with us Robert David Steele.
Oh, well, you reach so many more people than I do, David, so it's my honor to be in communion with you toward your listeners.
Robert, I want to hit a couple things right off the bat. The Trump-Putin summit. I went back, and when Ronald Reagan had the Reykjavik summit with Mikhail Gorbachev, it was universally propagandized that nothing would come of it. It was a disaster. And in fact, Time magazine, headline, big headline, Reagan flubs Reykjavik summit. This is in October of 1986. 3 years later, the Berlin Wall fell on November 9th, 1989. And on December 25th, no less, of 1991, the hammer and sickle was lowered for the last time over the Kremlin. I get the same feeling today, Robert. I believe that a tremendous amount happened at that summit. Is that wishful thinking, or am I way off on this?
Not only are you absolutely right, but let me take you further back to the assassination of John F. Kennedy. There are people right now, including John Brennan, that want to assassinate Donald Trump. Let me take you back to Khrushchev and Kennedy talking directly through a back channel and agreeing that the worst enemies of peace were their own generals. Trump has an entire deep state, and Putin has an entire deep state that wants a war between Russia and the United States of America. Now, I'm very fortunate to be in dialogue with Andrei Korchinov, who's the Director General of the Russian International Affairs Council. That's their equivalent of the Council of Foreign Relations, except they're not part of the deep state. They're actually loyal to the state of Russia. And we've talked about all of this. Now, Andrei is not my source, as it were, but I have a number of different sources that are telling me that what happened in the private conversation between Putin and Trump is that they exchanged information. And they have agreed that the deep state is their common enemy. And I personally believe, based on a number of things that I've read, that Putin identified to Trump very specific American elites who are both 9/11 traitors and pedophile traitors, right? At the highest levels of both the Democratic and the Republican parties, the highest levels of banking. Bill Browder was probably discussed. Trump knows that Bill Browder was probably an agent of the CIA in the undeclared economic war against Russia. Buzzy Congar, who left a $4 million a year job and took no money from the CIA for managing a gold war, an economic war against Russia from 1998 to 2001. Who was his deputy? John Brennan. John Brennan was not a clandestine police officer. John Brennan was an analyst who became a policy pimp. And he basically made his bones working on the George Bush, Dick Cheney agenda against Russia. So I believe Trump and Putin shared enough information now so that they know that they have common enemies. And let me just make one final point. I did a tremendous interview with the Sergeant report. It was being watched by 30,000 people when the Anti-Defamation League, which is the trusted flagger for YouTube, came in and shut it down. Now, that video can be seen at BitChute, and John McAfee, who's one of my friends, just tweeted it out to 800,000 people. So the video about the deep state is common enemy of Trump and Putin is out there, and nothing the Anti-Defamation League does is going to shut that video down.
Robert, one of the first people condemning Donald Trump for meeting Vladimir Putin was a person you've just spoken about, Brennan, the former head of the CIA under Obama. He was hysterical. His response was beyond panicked and desperate. I believe it all generated from the fact when he heard Browder's name brought up by Putin at the press conference at the conclusion of this summit, I believe he knew what was coming and what was discussed behind closed doors.
Yes, I agree with you. And I think that John Brennan is starting to see the noose tighten around his neck. There are a number of people that will eventually be hung, at least metaphorically speaking. And remember, I'm a huge truth and reconciliation guy. I believe it's more important to educate the many than to hang the few. But among the people that I believe will be metaphorically hung in the next 2 years are Dick Cheney, Larry Silverstein, and John Brennan, and maybe also James Clapper and Mike Hayden. These guys who I've reviewed 3 books by Hayden, by Clapper, and by Sir David Ormond and a professor in the UK. In the American system, Clapper and Brennan made up lies about the Russians hacking the election. The Russians did not hack the election. There were a few Russian officers that were fumbling around, but so were Israelis and Chinese and Germans and French. I mean, even the Ghanans are crying out loud. We're doing cyber espionage. The only person that hacked the American election was Hillary Clinton when she stole 13 primaries from Bernie Sanders, and that's what led to Seth Rich leaking to Julian Assange through a thumb drive, not through any kind of espionage, coming into the DNC server, which was never examined by the FBI because the DNC knew that the FBI would discover they hadn't been hacked. That was an insider thing. So Brennan now is really starting to become the poster child for how the secret intelligence world in the United States is part of the deep state, part of the shadow government, and very much against the legitimate constitutional elected presidents. They are the enemy.
Robert, I have been very critical of John Brennan.
As you should.
The people outside the window in the People's Republic of Ann Arbor have come down on me because they said the reason why you're critical of Brennan is because he was associated with Obama. And that is my criticism.
No, that's not right at all. I mean, Brennan was associated with George Bush. Mm-hmm. Okay, what you really have to do is look back at 1998. Brennan made his bones as a pimp for George Bush and Dick Cheney. All right, Brennan was a made man when he became Buzzy Krongard's deputy, and I believe that a proper judicial investigation will discover that John Brennan was instrumental in the CIA's role in 9/11 and the Cold War against Russia. John Brennan, in my view, properly investigated, will be found guilty of treason at multiple levels, which is a far cry from his insane accusation that Donald Trump is guilty of treason by being presidential and meeting with Vladimir Putin, his counterpart, from the greatest nation other than the United States on earth.
Robert, before I get into your 9/11 memorandum that you have sent to President Trump, I just want to touch on...
they're about to be sent. They're about to be packaged and sent, waiting for 2 more.
I want to bring up what Clapper recently said on CNN. Director of National Intelligence under Obama, I believe also a traitor and a criminal, and has lied under oath to Congress. He was being interviewed by Anderson Cooper, as you know, and he said the following: "If it weren't for President Obama, we might not have done the intelligence community assessment that we did that set up a whole sequence of events which are still unfolding today, including Special Counsel Mueller's investigation. President Obama is responsible for that. It was he who tasked us to do the intelligence community assessment in the first place," end quote. Where did that come from? That just didn't slip out.
Well, let me say three things about Jim Clapper. One, he's one of the smartest generals I've ever known. Out of the 60 to 65 generals I've known, Clapper is easily one of the top 5 smartest. Two, he gave up his soul for spending. He basically has spent. He's been personally responsible for spending $1 trillion, for which we have nothing to show. General Tony Zinni has very accurately said that the secret intelligence community under James Clapper and others has provided at best 4%. So James Clapper is a failure as a director of intelligence. Now, third and foremost, I think Clapper is telling the truth when he says that Obama put all of this together. Barack Obama personally managed an anti-Trump abuse of authority. Barack Obama and his various assigns, Susan Rice and others, all used NSA improperly against Donald Trump. And so I give Clapper credit for that admission. The sad thing is that Clapper lost his integrity, because what he should have done was said no, and then gone to Congress and blown the whistle on the president. And unfortunately, Jim Clapper, Mike Hayden, and John Brennan are the epitome of people who have great intelligence and no integrity. They basically violated their oath to defend the Constitution against all enemies, domestic as well as foreign.
I want to turn to your 9/11 memorandum. It's brilliant. It is very concerning. It involves information, I believe, presented by Fred Burks, correct?
Among others.
And Fred Burks is
let me just tell your listeners and your viewers, what I've done in 30 days was not done by the 9/11 Commission.
True,
and
very
what
true.
I've done in 30 days, what I've done in 30 days is harvested collective intelligence by others. I have put together something no one else has done before, which is basically 25 memorandums from 25 experts, including Peter Dale Scott, who's the foremost author on the deep state, David Ray Griffin, Christopher Boyle, many others, and we're about to put before the president in a spiral-bound color collection of memorandums an absolutely compelling indictment of Zelikow and everybody who was on the commission. Now, Lee Hamilton has refused to respond to my request for a memorandum. Lee Hamilton knows that he was sodomized by Zelikow. The commissioners were sodomized by Zelikow. They were screwed over by a Zionist Dick Cheney control of that commission, so that it would, like the Warren Commission, lie to the American public and cover up the fact that Dick Cheney not only allowed 9/11 to happen, but made 9/11 happen, all as part of the Israeli Zionist Odom plan for balkanizing the Middle East. 9/11 was a terrorist act committed by our own government in collaboration with the Zionists and the Saudis in order to take us to war in Iraq, which was itself based on 935 lies that Charles Lewis has written about in his book, 935 Lies.
It also was a huge money laundering operation.
Yes.
As you point out, of $240 billion.
Yes. Now, those $240 billion, your listeners need to know, started out as the Black Lily Fund when we captured the map of Japanese treasure sites in the Philippines. And we were able to pull out billions and billions of dollars back then in 1945 gold, which today is worth trillions. That became the U.S. government's covert action fund that was completely off the books. And this is written about in a book called Gold Warriors by my friends Sterling Siegel, who sadly have passed away. But that then became the Black Eagle Trust. And the listeners to know is that the CIA and rogue elements of the U.S. government have enjoyed access to billions and billions of dollars in off-budget gold that they used to restore fascism in Italy, Germany, and Japan, that they used to support the rise of dictators in Indonesia, Iran, Guatemala, Saudi Arabia, and everywhere else. We're friends. We're best pals with 42 and 44 dictators on the planet. The only two we don't like, although we're making nice with North Korea now, are North Korea and Cuba. Cuba's not a threat to the United States in any way, shape, or form. The bottom line here is most of what we've been told by the history books and by the mainstream media is a lie. And we have been doing very evil things all over the world using this gold. And $240 billion, which once the gold funds left, was laundered on 9/11 back into the legal economy without any oversight at all, and that was part of the plan. And among the memos that we have in this thing that are going to be, which by the way are all free online, your listeners and viewers can go to tinyurl.com/91-POTUS, POTUS, President of the United States, 91 POTUS. And they're free online. They're also going to be published in what this series of memos is intended to do is call the president on his promise in Beaufort, South Carolina, I think it was, or somewhere in South Carolina, in February 2016, he promised to get to the bottom of 9/11 and tell the American people what actually happened. These memos are basically pushing that promise back at him, saying, Mr. President, you're giving a speech on 11th September 2018. Let that be the speech that tells the American people the truth about 9/11. And if he does that, Zionist influence in the United States of America, it's over.
Robert, what do you believe the chance of that happening is?
60%.
In this information that you're presenting, you mentioned the $240 billion. That was fraudulent bonds that were created in 1991 that had a 10-year expiration that just happened to be September 12th, 2001, correct?
Well, it's more complicated than that. One of the things the U.S. government has been very good at is ripping people off. For example, they have been taking billions and billions of dollars worth of gold from Chinese and Indonesian and other sources and Arab sources and issuing bonds. And then they've been basically ripping these people off when the bonds mature. And all of these bonds were going to mature on the 12th of September. And so they've basically been cheating people. People have been giving the U.S. money, gold, and other forms of wealth, and getting bonds in return, and the U.S. government, the Federal Reserve, is basically saying, sorry, your bonds are fraudulent. They're fake. They're not real. This is, the elders in China and Russia are now sick of this. And I believe that Trump in October is going to declare a gold-backed U.S. dollar. He's about to appoint another 3 or 4 members of the Federal Reserve Board. And therefore, I believe that Trump is taking over the Federal Reserve. Now, we still need the Constitutional Convention down the road. We need to reverse a number of things. We need to cancel the Federal Reserve as a private enterprise. We need to cancel the federal income tax. All taxes should be collected locally, and the state should fund the federal government with allocations. It can't declare a war unless the public agrees to pay for it. We need to reverse the 17th Amendment. The senators are supposed to represent their states. By making them popularly elected, we turn all senators into pimps for K Street. They've all become vulnerable to lobbyists. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done, but I believe the president has been very effective on the economic and financial front. Where he has been less effective is at connecting with the 99%. We can talk about that if you wish.
Well, and I'd like to talk about that. Of note, Robert, that you point out in your memorandum, that one of the entities that was investigating these bonds, this fraudulent financial activity, was the Office of Naval Intelligence. And it just so happened on September 11th, 2001, the portion of the Pentagon that was hit housed the Office of Naval Intelligence when 29 of the 30 members investigating this perished, correct?
The Pentagon was not hit by an airplane. Those were pre-planted explosives, and the holes were blown from the inside out, both the alleged entry hole and the alleged exit hole. There is no airplane. There was one airplane blown up on the helipad, and Barbara Hunter, who worked for Ronald Reagan, has an excellent memo on what actually went down in the Pentagon. Just like the Oklahoma City bombing, just like the World Trade Center, pre-planted explosives. All right? And I mean, one of the things that really is remarkable to me is how easily the American public has fallen prey to lies from the mainstream media, including Fox, the Fox channel. Fox is not being relied on anything anymore. CNN, Crap News Network, Fox, New York Times, the Washington Post, these are all conveying lies to the American public, which is why I believe President Trump needs to establish a truth channel that cannot be censored or manipulated by the Anti-Defamation League, which is the secret police for the deep state.
Robert, I want to touch on something. You had mentioned if Trump comes out on September 11, 2018 and speaks the truth, that it will blow apart the Zionist control, if you will, of the system.
Yes.
So when someone speaks about Zionist control of the system, you know where I'm going to go with this.
Yes, I'm not talking about my friends, the Jews.
Right. So, but this is very important. This is very important because when our viewers take this information to their relatives, they will immediately be confronted when they start talking about the Zionist takedown. Oh, you know, you're an anti-Semite to be even thinking about this, let alone saying it.
That's the greatest myth in history. And let me share a secret. I've had the operation. I'm half Jewish. Okay, it's absolutely vital to distinguish between Zionist economic and political and social subversion and Judaism. Now, let me make a point here, because I've run a very successful series at phi-beta-eta.net, and people can search for Zionism strike, and they'll get to the 19 strikes, starting with the USS Liberty. We'll give them a buy on John F. Kennedy, because that was actually Lyndon Baines Johnson and Allen Dulles and J. Edgar Hoover. But there were two Zionists present as Israeli official observers. One of them is dead, Yitzhak Rabin. The other one is alive and living in New York. His name is Arnon Milchan, and he may have been the theatrical producer for 9/11. He did 2 practice movies on airplanes simulated as flying into buildings that I think were instrumental to creating the narrative of airplanes flying into buildings, even though they screwed it up because we disproved all of that. Haaretz is one of the most responsible news outlets in Israel. And Haaretz published an article a few months ago saying, is it time for all Jews to boycott Israel? The divorce between Judaism and Zionism is now final. The Israeli legislature just passed legislation that makes Israel an apartheid state, officially. It's a Jewish state officially. And the state of Israel is claiming that every Jew worldwide belongs to Israel, which means they're saying every Jew worldwide is an agent of a foreign power. Mm-hmm. This is insane. No Jew wants to be considered an agent of Israel. The divorce between Judaism and Zionism is now final. We're just in the process of working out who gets the kids. And I believe that Donald Trump, working with people like Michael Bloomberg in New York, a sane, wealthy Jew who understands all of this and who probably knows more about 9/11 and what Rudy Giuliani knew when, because 9/11, the buildings were condemned in 1989. Okay, it was known in 1989 that those buildings had to be dismantled piece by piece. They could not be done by controlled demolition because there was this massive chemical asbestos issue with them. So a terrorist attack was actually a trifecta for Larry Silverstein, insurance companies, and the only people who really lost were the New Yorkers and the first responders basically were cancered to death by this false flag attack. Um, so I think there is very positive stuff down the road. And I'll tell you something. I think Donald Trump's going to do it. If he doesn't do it, I've got 4 billionaires that are already talking about Plan B, which is who comes after Trump that will do it. Zionism in the United States of America is over. It's just a question of time now before we clean up the battlefield.
Robert, I'm interested in your dissection of Trump's relationship with Israel. Right? He moved, right? So if he comes out on 9/11, 2018 and says, here's the truth, and here's who was involved, and here's what so square that to me with him moving the embassy and this relationship that he seems to have on and off with Netanyahu.
I don't know Donald Trump personally. Obviously, I'm very, very interested in our president. I'm very interested in our president's being successful. And it is an absolute that the United States of America cannot be the greatest nation ever unless we get rid of this Zionist parasite. It is sucking our bone marrow from within. It's sucking it from within in the economy. The Zionists are using technical penetrations of all computers to achieve economic advantage, including the equivalent of insider trading on steroids. Okay, so they're really hurting us economically. They penetrated U.S. government. 9% of all Congresspeople and 9% of our senior executive service is a dual U.S. Israeli citizen. We should be taking away their security clearances if they don't give up their Israeli citizenship. And then, of course, you have the social cancer. The Hollywood pedophilia connection with Harvey Weinstein, the Jeffrey Epstein pedophilia, Lolita Express, and all of this stuff. So there is absolutely no question that if Donald Trump wants to be the greatest president ever, and if he wants to make America great again, Zionism is the third rail. It's got to be disconnected. The parasite has got to be put to death. Period. End of message. Now, Trump is a New Yorker.
Right.
He understands everything there is to understand about Zionism and Judaism and the way in which these are meshed and all of this. He knows all of this stuff. He allowed his daughter, the apple of his eye, to marry an Orthodox Jew. Now, there's multiple layers of Judaism, okay? And so the Chabad Jews think of themselves as godlike. And all the other Jews, in particular the American progressive and reform Jews, are considered scum, along with Christians and Muslims, by the Chabad Jews, okay? Debbie Wasserman Schultz, the Broward County, the Parkland shoot, all of this is wrapped up in. I believe Trump is extraordinarily tough. Mike Seidman is a great, great American, a great Jew. And he would be my choice for ambassador to Israel. And he would be sent to Israel armed with a very large cattle prod with Netanyahu's name on it. But Seidman has pointed out that Jerusalem is off limits. Moving the embassy to Jerusalem is in violation of all past international treaties, laws, regulations, and expectations. It should not have been done. Some people believe that Donald Trump did that as a strategic move to put Netanyahu off his guard. There are a number of people from the Pentagon now who are saying that denuclearization of the Koreas is going to be followed by the denuclearization of the Middle East, starting with Israel. Israel has an undeclared nuclear program 10 to 100 times bigger than Iran's, paid for by the U.S. taxpayer.
Right.
Enough already, as my Jewish friends would say. Enough already. Let's put a stop to this. We need to denuclearize Israel. We need to restore Palestine. We need to create a Kurdish confederacy. We need to peace between Sunnis and Shiites. We need to stop supporting pedophile Saudi. There are other things we need to. I've actually proposed a peace through a contact in Russia. It has 8 points. 8 points, all right? All this attempt to demonize Iran, an Israeli Zionist attempt to focus on one of the 8 things that need to happen. I think smarter than that. Trump is finally starting to realize how much power he's got. when he is in partnership with Xi Jinping. The Nobel Peace Prize is going to be awarded to Xi Jinping and Trump and Putin some future date. And I have to emphasize, the Koreas would not be uniting denuclearizing if Xi Jinping had not taken the initiative. In that deal, Donald Trump was close. He's the guy who said, yes, will, if you do X, Y, and Z. So we're going to denuclearize the North and denuclearize the South. Now, that translates logically. It's exactly the same thing with Italy and claim common ground Turkey and Syria and Iran. And I will make a prediction right here and now. I predict that within the next 6 months, Donald Trump will be personally in Iran and Assad and Syria. He's that kind of president.
I have to say something, Robert. While everyone else was predicting war with North Korea, months before the North Korean summit occurred, you came out and you said there's going to be a reunification of the Korean Peninsula. There's going to be peace in the area. Donald Trump is going to be meeting with Kim Jong-un. And I'm telling you, Robert, I will tell you, you got, I know for a fact, because when you said this on our show, immense grief. Immense grief. And Robert, you were the only person months before it occurred, was even on the radar screen for other people. You were the first one who said that. So now that you're saying this, in my mind, it carries significant water and significant credibility. And it could be, and tell me if I'm thinking about this wrong, he talks about moving the embassy to Jerusalem. And then he says to Netanyahu, okay, look, we got it here. Now you're going to give up your nukes. This is part of
I expect the embassy to leave Jerusalem at some point. I believe Jerusalem is inevitably going to be an international city. And it may be that Mecca needs to be also. But bottom line here is the Palestinians have had their country stolen from them. The Palestinians have been genocided and displaced. The Zionists have moved 70 to 80% of the Palestinian population into refugee status. And one of the reasons Europe is having so many problems with unemployed, very angry Muslim males is because the United States and the United Kingdom have stood by idly while Israel has wrecked the Middle East. Okay? There is an excellent book called Enclosure by Gary Fields. I'm in the process of having it translated into Chinese, Russian, Farsi, and Arabic. And then I'm going to donate those translations to the publisher. And if they don't like it, screw them. I'm going to put them on the internet. But the book needs to be published in Russian, Chinese, Farsi, and Arabic. Bottom line here is that the Zionists have stolen Palestine. I predict they will come when Tel Aviv to the sea and a little bit to the north becomes a Jewish enclave, and the rest of Palestine is restored as the Palestinian state.
Robert, you have incredible insight. And you have even...
Well, only as good as my sources. Now, my Korean thing came from a Japanese princess who is the royal family liaison to the North Koreans. And I met her because of Benjamin Fulford, who is the top economic journalist in Asia, the English perspective. So I'm only as good as my sources. What's interesting for me is that people are starting to come out of the woodwork now. And I'm really starting to have... and I believe Donald Trump has his own intelligence network. And part of it may be based on the New York Police Department, which most people don't realize is the New York Police Department and the U.S. Navy appear to have extraordinary intelligence capabilities that are completely outside of and concealed from what the U.S. intelligence community is aware of. There's some good things happening back there, and I think Trump is going to get a grip on the economy. The only thing he's not doing that really frustrates me is he hasn't thrown the press out of the White House. He hasn't created a truth channel. He hasn't created a Trump studio. He's not connecting to the 99%. And I really emphasize hashtag walkaway needs hashtag unrigged. We need an election reform act for all the people walking away from the Democratic Party who will never in a million years join the Republican Party, which is just as corrupt. They need Greens, Libertarians, Independents need to feel like they can put people into Congress and create a swing vote and demand evidence-based governance. So that's the only thing the president's not doing. I really desperately feel he needs to do between now and November. The Election Reform Act and a truth channel.
Robert, I want to conclude the interview with this. Many of our viewers are very frustrated. They are frustrated that the rule of law has been decimated over the decades, whether it's with the Bush 1, Bush 2, Clinton's, right? Do you believe that there are 40,000 sealed indictments that are ready to hit, or is that just...
I believe there are 40,000 sealed indictments, but I don't think 39,000 of them will ever be open. What I believe this was a really brilliant move, because what the president and Jefferson Sessions, who's been a very fine attorney general on those areas where he's focused, he made a mistake recusing himself and allowing Obama holdovers to screw over the president with the Mueller investigation. By the way, Mueller's going to get hung one of these days for covering up 9/11 truth for Dick Cheney. All right, Mueller's sole job as director of the FBI was to protect Dick Cheney, okay, and to lie to the public about 9/11. So Mueller disgraced himself as director of the FBI, and one day I hope he will be held accountable in the hearts and minds of the American public. Again, truth and reconciliation. I mean him no ill will, but the public needs to understand he betrayed his oath of office. Now, 39,000 of those sealed indictments were intended as direct warning shots. Basically, Trump has neutralized 90% of 1% with those sealed indictments. You still have the matter of getting control over the Federal Reserve. You still have the matter of getting back the $40 trillion that were stolen from the public. I hear different numbers, but the number that keeps coming up is $15 trillion. I'm hearing Trump has gotten $15 trillion back. If he were to get $22 trillion back, that would wipe out the American national debt. I'm hearing that he is about to put $1.5 trillion into the U.S. economy from the bottom up, with 1,500 or more newly minted billionaires who have two marching orders: create new jobs and have new construction. That's going to change everything.
And do you believe that Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, John Brennan, the Bushes, the Clintons will walk?
The short answer is no. The long answer is I expect most of them to die of heart attacks in the very near future. And the longer answer is they will be disgraced in the hearts and minds of every American citizen, including all Democrats, within 4 years.
Robert, people need to follow you on a daily basis. You have phenomenal websites that and incredible courage to present the information you present. And here's the interesting thing about you, Robert, that many people don't have. You encourage people to disagree with you, but present facts to back up their positions. Many people in your position do not want to touch anyone who disagrees with them. Because, as you well admit, a number of the things you present are so far ahead of the curve, it challenges people and any type of normalcy bias they still might retain. You encourage people to disagree with you. You encourage people to present alternative information to you to disprove you. How can folks follow your efforts and your information and your courageous activities?
Well, let me make the point that the one-pagers for the president contain a number of memos that many people don't agree with, including memos that say that it was directed energy weapons or it was a nuclear weapon or there were no airplanes or whatever. The whole point of presenting a series of 25 memos to the president is to show the 25 things that the 9/11 Commission did not address. I make no judgment myself. I simply join Richard Gage and Peter Dale Scott and David Ray Griffin and others in asking the president to live up to his campaign promise to get to the bottom of 9/11 and tell us the truth. And the 11th of September coming up would be an excellent time for the president to not only tell us the truth, but use that truth to put to death the Zionist AIPAC, ABL, agents of the foreign power influence over the United States of America. We must cleanse ourselves of this parasite, or we cannot be the greatest country ever. PhiBetaIota.net, Phi Beta Kappa, but iota for intelligence. PhiBetaIota.net is free with no ads. It does normally 4 email posts a day. It's been doing 5 while we've been doing the 9/11 series, but that comes to a close on the 3rd. So I'd be glad if people care to subscribe to that. I'm planning to close all of my social media accounts once I've won a particular lawsuit that I've got going on defamation. And if I can create a truth channel built around BitChute. BitChute uses BitTorrent and Parker CEO. We want to create a truth channel that brings together text messages, emails, videos, posts, and shared documents. And it cannot be censored or manipulated by the Anti-Defamation League, the secret police for the deep state. So there's a lot of exciting stuff going on. And, of course, my personal website is robertdavidsteele.com. That's everything I've ever written. All of my interviews are all available free online, including my books. With one exception, I don't own the English rights for the Open Source Everything Manifesto. I do own the foreign language translation rights, and it's been translated into Chinese and Spanish. And I suspect it's a whole other languages I don't know about. Anyway, David, thank you for your attention. Bottom line for me is every American needs to get back into the election process. Every American needs to tell the president that they hate both parties and they want an election reform act. #unrigged.
Robert, I'd like to thank you for everything you have done, everything you are doing, and everything that you will do. You're incredibly courageous. You are a person who savors being on point. You savor, if you will, breaking the ice. There are very few people in the world like that. And
I just have nothing better to do, David.
Oh, I don't know how you find the hours in the day to do what you do, Robert. You are an incredibly busy individual.
Unemployment is the secret to my success.
I wish you the very best.
I love donations. Donations would be helpful. I take no salary. I have no pension, and I get Social Security beginning in August.
So donations. So if folks want to help your efforts in uncovering the truth, where do they send those?
Oh, that's easy. I love PayPal. PayPal.me/EarthIntel.
Very good. Again, I'd like to thank you. And as we close every segment, folks, dream big and dare to fail. This is Dave Janda signing off. Thanks for joining us today.
God bless you, David. God bless America. Bye-bye.